Your father won't be able to make it to the altar in time. I'm sure you understand. The message arrived on my fiancé's cell phone 2 weeks before our wedding, sent by my future father-in-law himself with the coldness of someone canceling any old appointment. Emily was sitting next to me on the sofa in our living room, choosing the last flowers for her bouquet, when she read those words that broke her heart in front of me. I saw the exact moment when she realized that the man who was supposed to walk with her on the most important day of her life had chosen his manipulative brother over his own daughter. My name is Elliot, I'm 31 years old, and I never imagined I would witness my future wife being abandoned at the altar by her own father because of a party fabricated by his brother-in-law, who has hated me since day one. But while Emily cried silently, clutching the phone, I was already mentally calculating every move I would make to ensure that Richard Evans would bitterly regret this decision for the rest of his life. What he didn't know was that I had meticulously documented every manipulation of his favorite son over the past 3 years. And now it was time to use that information. The story began 5 years ago when I met Emily at a coffee shop in Portland. She was sitting alone at a corner table, reading an art book while drinking iced tea, completely oblivious to the movement around her. She had wavy brown hair that reflected the afternoon light and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence when she talked about the paintings she loved most. She was a graphic designer at a small but respected agency, creative and passionate about her work, with a smile that lit up any room. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. We talked about art, travel, dreams, and family, and I discovered that behind that vibrant personality there was a deep sadness related to her family dynamics. Emily had lost her mother at the age of 12, and since then she had had a complicated relationship with her father and especially with her older brother Marcus, who always found ways to sabotage her happiness. I worked as a financial advisor and had built a solid career helping small businesses grow. I came from a close-knit and loving family in Seattle, where my parents were still married after 35 years and had always supported my decisions. The difference between our families was evident from my first meeting with her father. Richard Evans was a tall, imposing man in his 60s who worked as an executive at an insurance company. He had built a respectable reputation in the community, but at home he showed such obvious favoritism toward his older son that it was embarrassing. Marcus, 3 years older than Emily, was a real estate agent and had inherited all of his father's superficial charm, but he used this skill to manipulate situations to his advantage. From our first family gathering, I could tell that Marcus saw me as a threat. Not out of romantic jealousy, but because my presence in Emily's life meant that she finally had someone who valued and supported her unconditionally. This upset the balance of power he had cultivated over the years. During our relationship, I witnessed countless situations where Marcus deliberately created conflicts or invented emergencies at the most important moments for Emily. At her graduate school graduation, he called his father claiming a health crisis that later turned out to be a simple cold. On her 20th birthday, he organized a surprise family reunion at the same time as the party we had been planning for months. Always with the same excuse, he was the responsible son looking out for the family's well-being. Richard believed every word, or pretended to, because it was more convenient to keep Marcus as the center of his attention. Emily tried to explain these situations to her father, but Marcus had years of advantage in building his narrative as a devoted and concerned son. I began to document these patterns discreetly, noting dates, conversations, and contradictions in Marcus's stories. Not out of paranoia, but because my professional experience had taught me to recognize financial manipulation, and the same signs were appearing in his behavior. When Emily and I got engaged after 3 years of dating, the family reaction was revealing. My parents were thrilled and immediately started planning how to help with the wedding. Richard offered mechanical congratulations over the phone, while Marcus made a point of mentioning that he hoped the wedding wouldn't interfere with family traditions. It was at that moment that I began to suspect he was planning something to sabotage our big day. If this story of family manipulation is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how I turned Marcus' sabotage into a lesson he'll never forget. Because what happened next revealed that Emily's protective brother had completely underestimated the man she had chosen to spend the rest of her life with. Marcus Evans wasn't just Emily's older brother. He was an architect of manipulation who had turned the family dynamic into a masterpiece of psychological control. At 34, he had built a respectable career as a luxury real estate agent in Portland, using the same superficial charm he employed to keep his father under his influence. Tall like Richard, with dark hair that was always perfectly coiffed and expensive suits that projected success, Marcus knew exactly how to present himself as the ideal son. But behind that flawless facade was a man consumed by the need to be the center of his family's attention, and Emily represented a constant threat to that position. During our first family dinner 3 years ago, I witnessed Marcus in action for the first time. Emily had landed an important promotion at the agency and was excited to share the news with her father during our monthly visit. She had barely begun to talk about her new position when Marcus interrupted with a worried expression. "Dad, I need to tell you something about the company I work for. I found out today that one of my top clients is considering withdrawing his investment from your company's pension fund." The change of subject was so abrupt that Emily stopped mid-sentence, watching as her father immediately turned his full attention to Marcus. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus elaborated on a complex story about volatile markets and investment decisions, completely monopolizing the conversation. Emily tried a few times to get back to her announcement, but Marcus always found a way to redirect the focus back to himself. When we finally left the house, Emily was visibly shaken. "This always happens," she said to me in the car, her voice heavy with familiar sadness. "No matter what I have to share, Marcus always has something more important, more urgent." I began to notice this pattern repeating itself consistently. During Richard's birthday last year, Emily had planned a special surprise, a weekend trip to a resort her father had always wanted to visit. She worked for weeks organizing every detail, coordinating dates, and making reservations. 2 hours before the surprise was to be revealed, Marcus called his father with a family emergency. His ex-girlfriend, Kelly, was going through an emotional crisis and needed him to cancel all his weekend plans to support her. Richard immediately made himself available to help, praising Marcus for his emotional responsibility and maturity in handling delicate situations. Emily's trip was postponed indefinitely. I later found out through social media posts that Marcus had spent that weekend at a bachelor party in Las Vegas. Kelly wasn't in crisis. She had been happily in a new relationship for months. But Richard never learned the truth, and Emily never had the courage to confront the lie directly. "If I say Marcus lied, I'll look jealous and resentful," she explained when I asked why she didn't call him out on these situations. "He always has a way of turning things around and making me look like the villain." Marcus had developed an almost scientific system for sabotaging Emily's important moments. When she won a graphic design award that would be presented at a prestigious ceremony, Marcus organized an urgent family meeting to discuss the future of the family at exactly the same time. Richard considered the meeting more important than his daughter's ceremony. When Emily decided to take painting classes on weekends, a passion she had abandoned after her mother's death, Marcus began scheduling domestic emergencies that required her presence at her father's house. Leaks that never existed, electrical problems that magically resolved themselves before the electrician arrived, health issues with Richard that turned out to be false alarms. Always something that justified sacrificing Emily's personal interests for the good of the family. But it was during the planning of our engagement that I witnessed the true extent of Marcus' cruelty. Emily had chosen a special restaurant where she wanted to announce our engagement to her father. She reserved a table, planned the perfect moment, and even bought a new dress for the occasion. 30 minutes before we were due to leave, Marcus called in a panic. "Dad, I need your help urgently. I went to a house to view a property for an important client and now I'm locked in. The security system has been triggered and the police are on their way. I need you to come and pick me up and explain the situation." Richard canceled dinner immediately, leaving Emily devastated. Later, through a colleague of Marcus's in the real estate business, I discovered that he had made up the whole story. He spent that night at a bar with friends, posting photos on social media that he carefully excluded his father from seeing. The cruelty was not only in the lie, but in the precision with which Marcus chose to sabotage that particular moment. He knew Emily was planning to announce her engagement. She had innocently mentioned it during a phone conversation the week before. Marcus deliberately destroyed one of the most important nights of her life out of pure spite. It was at that moment that I began to systematically document his manipulations. As a financial advisor, I was used to identifying fraudulent patterns and inconsistencies in complex narratives. Marcus's lies followed a predictable template. They always involved emotional urgency, always cast Richard as the savior, and always coincided with important moments in Emily's life. I started saving screenshots of his social media posts that contradicted his claims, noting the dates and times of his emergencies, and verifying details of his stories through mutual contacts. What I discovered was a systematic network of manipulation that had been going on for over a decade. Marcus wasn't just a jealous brother. He was a calculating manipulator who had built his entire family identity on suppressing Emily's successes. Each of her victories represented a threat to his status as the special child. So he made sure those victories were overshadowed, sabotaged, or completely ignored. Richard, for his part, had become a willing participant in this dysfunctional system. Not out of deliberate malice, but out of a combination of unprocessed grief over his late wife and the convenience of having Marcus take on family responsibilities. It was easier to believe that Marcus was the devoted son and that Emily was naturally more independent and distant. Marcus carefully nurtured this narrative, painting himself as the protector of the family while portraying Emily as self-centered and unreliable. "Emily never wanted much contact with us anyway," he would tell his father. "She has her own interests now. It's natural for creative people to be more solitary." The perversity was in how Marcus used Emily's genuine qualities, her independence, creativity, and resilience, to justify emotional abandonment. When Emily didn't react dramatically to his sabotage, Marcus interpreted it as proof that she didn't really care about the family. It was such a sophisticated system of gaslighting that even Emily began to doubt her own perceptions. "Maybe I'm just too sensitive," she told me after another incident. "Maybe Marcus really just wants to help, and I'm misreading him." But I had evidence. Meticulous documentation that proved the deliberate pattern. And now, with Marcus scheduling his party on the same day as our wedding, he had made the mistake I had been waiting years for. He had become so confident in his ability to manipulate situations that he took unnecessary risks. This time, however, he didn't know he was dealing with someone who understood exactly how he operated. While Emily cried on our couch, clutching that cold message from her father, I was already calculating every move of my response. Marcus had completely underestimated the man his sister had chosen as her partner. And that arrogance would be exactly the opening I needed to expose 3 years of documented manipulation in one devastating move that would destroy the facade he had built forever. In the 3 days following Richard's devastating message, Marcus intensified his sabotage campaign with a cruelty that even I underestimated. He started by posting on social media about his professional achievement party that would coincidentally take place on the same day as our wedding. The posts were carefully crafted to maximize Emily's embarrassment. "I finally closed the biggest deal of my career. Dad will be here to celebrate with me on this special day. Family always comes first." Every word was chosen to cut deep. Special day, echoing our wedding date ironically. Family always comes first, being a direct stab at Emily's heart. Marcus was certain he had one. Emily could barely get out of bed in the morning. I found her several times sitting on the bathroom floor, crying silently before work. "I should have seen this coming," she whispered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hands. "Marcus always gets what he wants. Always." The resignation in her voice broke my heart, but it also fueled my determination. She had spent so many years accepting these humiliations that she had completely normalized the emotional abuse. During breakfast on Thursday, Emily received another message, this time from Richard trying to justify his choice. "Honey, you understand that Marcus is going through a very important time in his career. As a father, I need to support him. I'm sure you and Elliot will have a beautiful wedding even without me there at the beginning." The message didn't even acknowledge that he was completely missing the ceremony. Without me there at the beginning, as if he were just going to be a few minutes late instead of abandoning his daughter entirely. Emily showed me the message, her hands shaking. "He really believes he's doing the right thing," she said, her voice breaking. "Marcus convinced him that I'm selfish for wanting my own father to walk me down the aisle." That was when I made my final decision. Marcus had crossed every line imaginable, and Richard had become a willing participant in the emotional destruction of his own daughter. They needed to face consequences commensurate with the cruelty they had shown. That afternoon, I called my older sister Jessica, who worked as a private investigator in Seattle. "Jess, I need your professional help. It's about Emily's family and some things that need to be exposed." Jessica had known Emily for 4 years and had always noticed how tense she became when we talked about her family. "Elliot, you know I can help with anything. What's going on?" I explained the whole situation, including the 3 years of documentation I had collected on Marcus. "You have all of this documented systematically?" she asked, impressed. "Dates, contradictions, evidence on social media?" "Every incident from the last 3 years. Patterns, motivations, even some audio recordings of Marcus lying blatantly to our faces." Jessica laughed in admiration. "Little brother, You've documented a case of psychological manipulation better than some of my corporate clients. Send it all to me. I'll organize it so anyone can understand the extent of what Marcus has done. I also called my father, David, a retired lawyer with extensive connections in the Portland legal community. Dad, I need a favor. It's nothing illegal, but I need some truths to come out in a way that will have maximum impact. My father had met Marcus only once, during our engagement dinner, and instantly distrusted him. That young man has all the signs of a manipulative narcissist, he had told me later. Keep an eye on the family dynamics. Now, explaining the full situation, my father was visibly angry. Elliot, this behavior constitutes systematic psychological abuse. What are you planning to do? Full exposure, Dad. I want their entire community to see exactly who Marcus really is. And I want Richard to face the consequences of choosing to support a manipulator instead of protecting his daughter. My father was silent for a moment, considering the implications. Do you have enough evidence to back this up? 3 years of meticulous documentation. Jessica is organizing everything into a presentable format. Then we have a solid foundation. I'll make some calls. On Friday, I received an unexpected call from Tom, one of Marcus's co-workers at the real estate agency. Elliot? This is Tom Harrison. I work with Marcus. Can we talk? We met at a cafe away from Marcus's office. Tom was an honest, hard-working man in his 40s who had observed Marcus's behavior with growing discomfort. I heard about the situation with Emily's wedding, he said, fidgeting nervously with his coffee. And I need to tell you something. He revealed that Marcus had been lying constantly about family emergencies, to miss work or cancel important appointments. Last week, he said his father had a heart attack and he had to rush to the hospital. He canceled an important presentation for a client. Tom had later discovered through mutual friends that Marcus had spent that afternoon at a spa with a casual girlfriend. It's not the first time. He uses his family as an excuse for everything, but when I discreetly investigate, I find out he's lying. More importantly, Tom revealed that Marcus had openly boasted about sabotaging Emily's plans. On Monday, he was laughing in the office saying he'd finally put his spoiled little sister in her place. He said she'd always tried to compete with him for his father's attention, but now he'd proven who was more important. The casual cruelty of these statements confirmed everything I suspected about Marcus. He wasn't just reacting defensively to Emily's successes. He was actively destroying her happiness for pure sadistic pleasure. Tom, would you be willing to testify about these conversations if necessary? He nodded immediately. Marcus is a cancer on that company. We're all tired of the lies and manipulation. If there's anything I can do to help Emily, count me in. That evening, Emily was particularly depressed. We had received confirmation that 3 couples who were friends of the Evans family had canceled. Marcus had casually mentioned that our wedding was facing some family complications, and that it might be best not to attend. He's systematically destroying our special day, Emily said, tears streaming down her face. And my father is letting it happen. I sat down next to her on the couch, holding her hands. Emily, trust me. Marcus has completely underestimated who he's dealing with. What do you mean? He thinks he can manipulate our family the way he's manipulated you for years. But he's making one fundamental mistake: he doesn't really know me. Emily looked at me curiously for the first time in days. Elliot, are you planning something? I smiled for the first time since we received Richard's message. Marcus has spent 3 years building a reputation based on lies and manipulation. He feels untouchable because no one has ever challenged his narrative. I grabbed my laptop and showed Emily some of the evidence I had collected. Screenshots from social media that contradicted his emergency claims, audio recordings where he lied blatantly, statements from colleagues confirming his pattern of behavior. Emily's eyes widened as she examined each document. Elliot, you documented all of this? Every significant incident from the last 3 years. And now I have professional allies helping me organize this information in a way that will have maximum impact. What are you going to do? I closed my laptop and looked her straight in the eyes. I'm going to make sure Marcus faces the consequences of every lie he's told. And I'm going to do it in a way that he can never repeat this behavior with you or anyone else. Emily hugged me for the first time in a week, and I felt her tension begin to ease. Do you really think you can expose him? Emily, when Marcus scheduled your party on our wedding day, he made the mistake of choosing a public and significant date for his latest manipulation. That gave me the perfect platform. Platform. I smiled, already visualizing every move of my plan. Our wedding will go exactly as planned. But Marcus will find out that turning our special day into a stage for his manipulations was the biggest mistake of his life. What Marcus didn't know was that I had prepared a presentation that would not only expose 3 years of lies, but would do so in front of the entire community he had tried to impress. His fake celebration would become the scene of his most complete and public humiliation. And this time, he would have no way to reverse the narrative or manipulate people's perceptions. Because the truth, when presented with irrefutable evidence, has a devastating power that even the most skilled manipulator cannot overcome. The next morning, I began to implement the most elaborate plan of my life. First, I called our wedding planner Patricia, a professional woman who knew all the event vendors in Portland. Patricia, I need to add a special presentation to the reception. Something that will surprise all the guests. I explained that I wanted to pay tribute to the family by showing the importance of true family ties versus false ones. It will be a multimedia presentation with photos, testimonials, and a narrative about how to recognize authentic relationships. Patricia was intrigued, but professional. Sure, Elliot. We can set up the audio-visual system for your presentation. How much time do you need? 15 minutes maximum. And I'd like it to be a complete surprise for Emily, too. Meanwhile, Jessica had organized my documentation into a devastatingly clear presentation. She created a visual timeline showing each of Marcus's manipulations over the past 3 years, with corresponding evidence, screenshots, audio recordings, witness statements. Elliot, this is more complete than some corporate cases I've investigated. You have behavioral patterns, psychological motivations, and irrefutable evidence. My father David had done his own research through legal contacts. Son, I've discovered something interesting. Marcus has some pending issues with the Real Estate Commission. Customer complaints about deceptive practices that were hushed up. What kind of practices? Lying about property conditions, manipulating offers, breaching confidentiality. Nothing criminal, but enough to seriously damage his professional license if properly documented. The information opened up possibilities I hadn't considered. Marcus wasn't just a family manipulator. He was a dishonest professional who used the same tactics at work. Throughout the week, Tom continued to feed me information from the office. Marcus is bragging openly about putting Emily in her place, he reported during a phone call. Yesterday he told a client that some people need to learn that family has a hierarchy. But it was on Thursday that I received the most valuable piece of information. Tom discovered that Marcus had lied to get time off for our wedding day. He told his supervisor he was sick with a contagious viral infection. He even provided a fake doctor's note. A fake doctor's note? Talking to the receptionist at the doctor's office, I found out that Marcus was never there on the date of the note. The doctor was out of town that week. This constituted documented fraud, a serious offense that could result in immediate termination and legal problems. Marcus was so confident in his ability to manipulate situations that he had become careless, leaving easily traceable clues. While I gathered evidence, Emily tried to process the family betrayal in a healthy way. She began therapy with a psychologist who specialized in toxic family dynamics. The therapist helped me understand that this isn't about me, Emily told me after a session. Marcus has a pattern of behavior that he would repeat with anyone who threatened his position. Seeing Emily gain professional perspective on the situation gave me even more motivation to expose Marcus completely. It wasn't just about our wedding, it was about breaking a cycle of psychological abuse that had lasted more than a decade. On Friday, 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus escalated his taunts in a cruel way. He posted a video on social media explaining why he couldn't attend the wedding. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices between family commitments, he said to the camera with a fake sad expression. My father needs to be there to celebrate my most important professional achievement. The video was carefully edited to sound selfless, as if it were a noble sacrifice. I'm sure Emily understands that family means supporting each other in the moments that really matter. The cruelty was in the complete inversion of reality, portraying his sabotage as sacrifice and our frustration as selfishness. Emily watched the video and finally expressed genuine anger for the first time. "He really believes his own narrative," she said, tears of frustration streaming down her face. "He can lie so convincingly that even he believes it." It was at that moment that I made my final decision about the scope of my response. Originally, I had planned to only expose Marcus to family and close friends during our wedding. But his public cruelty demanded a proportional response. If he wanted to use social media to construct a false narrative, I would use the same platform to reveal the complete truth. I spent the weekend creating detailed profiles of every person who would be attending our wedding. I identified their values, concerns, and what would be most persuasive to each group. For Emily's co-workers, I prepared evidence focused on the professional impact of Marcus's manipulations. For family friends, I organized an emotional timeline showing how he had systematically sabotaged important moments in Emily's life. For Richard's business partners, I compiled information about Marcus's pattern of lies that suggested a lack of integrity in all areas of his life. My final plan had 3 integrated phases. First, during the reception, I would give my surprise presentation on the importance of true family, using the evidence I had gathered. Second, simultaneously, Tom and other colleagues of Marcus would receive documentation about his fraudulent practices at work. Third, Jessica would post a complete and factual exposé of the manipulations on social media, using the same platforms where Marcus had built his false narrative. The timing would be perfect. While Marcus was at his fake party, celebrating what he thought was his final victory over Emily, his professional and personal reputation would be systematically destroyed. But the most powerful element of my plan was something that neither Jessica nor my father knew about. During my investigations, I had discovered that Richard had had his own suspicions about Marcus for years. Through careful conversations with neighbors and family acquaintances, I learned that Richard had privately commented on inconsistencies in Marcus's stories. He knew, on some subconscious level, that he was being manipulated. But it was easier to accept Marcus's narrative than to confront the reality of having failed Emily as a father. My presentation would include evidence that would allow Richard to save his dignity while acknowledging the truth. I would offer him an honorable way out, the chance to be the father Emily always deserved, at the very moment she needed him most. If you're wondering how someone could orchestrate such a complex revenge while maintaining moral integrity, subscribe to the channel to find out how the truth, when presented strategically, can be the most powerful weapon against years of manipulation. On the Monday before the wedding, I did my final check of every element of the plan. I found no technical or moral flaws, only the absolute certainty that Marcus had completely underestimated the man Emily had chosen as her partner. He was about to discover that turning our special day into a stage for his final manipulation was the biggest strategic mistake of his life. Because while he was preparing his fake celebration, I was preparing a presentation that would expose not only his recent lies, but the entire architecture of deception he had built over more than a decade. The system he had used to control Emily would become the very mechanism of his own public destruction. The wedding day dawned with a perfect blue sky in Portland, but the storm I had orchestrated was about to irreversibly devastate Marcus's life. At 9 in the morning, while Emily was making the final preparations, I received confirmation from Tom via WhatsApp. Marcus just arrived at the office to pick up some documents before the party. I left the folder with the evidence on the supervisor's desk, as agreed. The first phase of my plan was in motion. Marcus had no idea that his fake medical certificate had been discovered, nor that Tom had documented every lie he had told over the past few months. At 10:30, my father David called me, his voice thick with professional satisfaction. "Elliot, our contacts at the Real Estate Commission have received the complete dossier on Marcus' fraudulent practices. The formal investigation will begin on Monday." The second phase was in place. While Marcus was getting ready for his fake celebration party, his professional license was already being questioned by regulatory authorities. At 11 o'clock, Jessica posted the first part of the exposé on social media. It was a devastating visual timeline showing every manipulation Marcus had carried out over the past 3 years, complete with irrefutable evidence, screenshots, audio recordings, witness statements. The truth about Marcus Evans, a case study in systematic family manipulation. The post was immediately shared by mutual friends, Emily's colleagues, and people who had witnessed Marcus' behavior over the years. As our ceremony began at 4 in the afternoon, Marcus was at his fake party, completely oblivious to the hurricane that was destroying his reputation in real time. During the ceremony, I saw Richard arrive discreetly at the back of the hall. He had left Marcus's party early, claiming a family emergency, exactly the kind of excuse Marcus always used. The irony was delicious. Emily walked down the aisle radiant, accompanied by my father David, who had offered to do the honors after Richard's cowardly absence. "Today we celebrate not only the love between Emily and Elliot," said the officiant, "but also the importance of choosing our family through our actions, not just blood." The words hit Richard like a slap in the face. During the reception, I gave my surprise presentation on true family. "I'd like to share some thoughts on authentic versus manipulative relationships," I announced to the guests. The presentation began innocently, talking about loyalty and mutual support. Then I showed concrete examples of manipulative behavior, using hypothetical situations that mirrored Marcus's actions exactly. Imagine someone who systematically sabotages a family member's important moments by creating fake emergencies to redirect attention. I saw Richard becoming visibly uncomfortable. Imagine fake documents to justify lies, manipulation of social media to construct fictional narratives. I projected screenshots of Marcus's posts about our family conflict, immediately followed by the evidence Jessica had compiled. The room fell silent. Some of you recognize this pattern because you've witnessed it firsthand. Tom stood up at the back of the room. "I can confirm that I worked with this person for 2 years and witnessed systematic lies about family emergencies." Other people began to share their own experiences with Marcus. The turning point came when I showed the complete timeline of the manipulations, including the audio recordings where Marcus openly admitted his sabotage. Richard heard his own voice being played back, canceling appointments with Emily based on Marcus's elaborate lies. "Dad, it's a medical emergency. Emily will understand." Followed by a recording of Marcus laughing with friends, I got my dad to cancel her dinner again. "She'll never learn who really matters in this family." Richard turned pale. At 7 o'clock that evening, while Marcus was still at his party, he received a flurry of calls. First, his supervisor at work informing him of his immediate suspension. Then, several clients canceling contracts after seeing the exposure on social media. Finally, Richard called him, his voice trembling with contained rage. "Marcus, I need to talk to you. Now." "Dad, I'm at my party. I thought you were here with me." "I'm at Emily's wedding. And I just found out that you've been lying to me for years." I heard the deadly silence on the other end of the line. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Marcus, I saw the evidence. I heard the recordings. You manipulated me into abandoning my own daughter on her wedding day." The call was abruptly disconnected. 15 minutes later, Marcus arrived at our wedding like a hurricane, his face red with rage and despair. He burst into the hall shouting, "Elliot, what have you done to me?" Security immediately moved in, but I motioned for them to let him in. I wanted everyone to see Marcus out of control, his mask of charm finally removed. "I just revealed the truth, Marcus. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment you deliberately sabotaged Emily's happiness. You destroyed my career. You destroyed your own career with your fraudulent practices. I just documented what you were already doing." Richard approached Marcus, disappointment written all over his face. "Son, why did you do this? Why did you lie to me about Emily all these years?" Marcus looked around the room, seeing all the faces that knew him now watching him with a mixture of disgust and pity. His celebration party had become the scene of his most complete humiliation. "You don't understand," he muttered, the arrogance finally evaporating. "I just wanted you to see me. And to achieve that, you psychologically tortured your sister for years," I replied calmly. Security finally escorted Marcus out of the hall, but the damage was done. His reputation was destroyed, his career was over, and his relationship with his father was irreparably broken. Richard approached Emily, tears streaming down his face. "Daughter, forgive me. I've been a terrible father." Emily embraced him, both of them crying out years of pain and miscommunication. Meanwhile, my phone was buzzing with messages from people who had seen the exhibition on social media. Marcus not only lost his job and his family, he had become a public case study in psychological manipulation. But the real victory wasn't in his downfall, but in the transformation I witnessed in that moment. Emily finally being valued by the father she had always loved, free from the invisible chains Marcus had forged over the years. The man who tried to destroy our marriage ended up creating the opportunity for a family to heal from decades of toxic manipulation. 6 months after our wedding, I received an unexpected call from Tom. "Elliot, I thought you'd like to know. Marcus was formally dismissed today. The Commission's investigation uncovered contract fraud dating back 2 years. Marcus's downfall was more complete than I had imagined. Not only did he lose his job and his professional license, but 3 clients filed lawsuits against him for deceptive practices. His reputation in Portland was definitely destroyed. More important, however, were the positive transformations that emerged from the rubble of his manipulations. Richard became the father Emily had always deserved. He began therapy to process his own grief over the loss of his wife and how it had affected his ability to be present for his children. "Elliot," he told me over lunch 3 months after the wedding, "thank you for forcing me to see the truth. I failed Emily for years." Emily blossomed in ways I had never seen before. Free from the invisible chains of Marcus's manipulation, she began to express opinions more assertively, pursue creative projects she had abandoned, and develop the self-confidence that Marcus had systematically destroyed. "For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I can just be myself without fear of sabotage," she told me one night as she worked on a painting, a hobby she had taken up again after years of neglect. Most surprising was the community reaction. Exposing Marcus publicly not only had negative consequences for him, but it also sparked important conversations about family manipulation and psychological abuse. Several people reached out to me to share their own experiences with manipulative family members, thanking me for courageously exposing patterns they recognized in their own lives. Jessica, my investigative sister, commented that my documentation had become an informal template for other similar cases. "You proved that systematic manipulation can be fought with organized evidence and careful strategy," she said. Marcus attempted reconciliation once, showing up at our house 6 months later, visibly broken and desperate. "Elliot, you destroyed my entire life," he said, the arrogance completely evaporated. "Marcus, I just revealed who you really were. Your own actions destroyed your life. Can I have a second chance with Emily?" I looked at Emily, who was standing next to me. "That's up to her, not me." Emily took a deep breath before responding. "Marcus, when you're willing to do serious therapy, to fully acknowledge what you've done, and to genuinely work on your own healing without expecting immediate forgiveness, we can talk. But that could take years." Marcus nodded, seeming to finally understand the magnitude of his actions. He moved to another city, where I hear he's working a modest job and going to therapy regularly. Perhaps, eventually, he will find a healthy way to relate to his family. As for me, I learned that the truth, when presented strategically with irrefutable evidence, has a transformative power that goes far beyond simple revenge. I didn't destroy Marcus for sadistic pleasure, but exposed a system of abuse that was hurting people I loved. Richard and Emily now have a genuine, healthy father-daughter relationship. Our married life has blossomed in an environment free of drama and toxic manipulation. And our story has become an example for other families facing similar dynamics. The most powerful lesson was understanding that confronting manipulators requires patience, documentation, and strategy, not impulsive emotional reactions. Marcus spent years constructing a false narrative about who he was versus who Emily was. Dismantling that narrative required systematic evidence and perfect timing to reveal the truth. If you are facing family manipulation or know someone stuck in similar toxic dynamics, subscribe to the channel for more stories of how the truth can free people from destructive relationships. 2 years later, Emily and I bought our first home. While moving in, we found a letter Richard had written but never sent, thanking us for saving his family from years of unconscious manipulation. "You gave me my daughter back," the letter read. "And you gave me the chance to be the father she always deserved." Today, Marcus is just a distant memory of a difficult period our family overcame. Emily paints regularly, Richard is a loving grandfather to our future children, and I've learned that sometimes protecting the people we love requires the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. The greatest revenge wasn't Marcus' downfall, but the healing of a family that finally learned to love each other without manipulation.